Hello everyone. I feel honored to have my paper selected for MDRC 2.0. As the topic suggests, the paper takes into cognizance the opposing forces of acceptance and apprehension with regards to colonial infiltration in Mamang Dai's novel, The Black Hill. This 2017 Sahitya Academy Award-winning novel is one of its kind because it explores the post-colonial concept of writing back as a kind of retelling. Before talking about the nuances, it is important to understand how Northeast India is viewed in contrast to the mainland. Cut off from the other parts of the country, it is often seen as underdeveloped, exotic, and homogeneous, and romanticized precisely because of its pristine mountains, rivers, and forests. As you can see in the slide, which shows a satellite image of Mebo, it is a place in Arunachal Pradesh where the novel is set. We will not dwell on the geography, but it is clearly visible that the land is covered with forest, making it quite hazardous. Now imagine what this would have been 2 centuries back when there were no proper means of transportation. With this as the backdrop, the novel recounts the story of three central characters, Jimur, Kajinsha, and Father Nicholas Crick, and it spans over the years from 1847 to 1855. Jimur, born in and named after a month in the village of Mebo, belongs to the Adi tribe, which was also known as the Abors. Kajinsa, a chief of the Mishmi tribe, falls in love with her, and they elope to settle down at his residence near the northern border, which divides their territory from Tibet. Meanwhile, a Jesuit missionary priest from Paris, Father Nicholas Crick, and his companion Augustine Boré try to get past these savage hill tribes in order to reach Tibet to preach Christianity. They make the hazardous journey twice, and a suspicion around the invasion of the Miglans. Now, these tribes they used to call the foreigners Miglans. As the suspicion around the Miglans increase, these two priests are killed. The death of two white men allows the officers to wait the land, and because their safety was in Kajinsa's hands, they hold him responsible. He is arrested and sentenced to death. In this slide, we see the image of the Mismi tribe, the Adi or the Abo tribe, and also the portrait of Father Nicholas Crick. Indeed, the Black Hill opens with the overt theme of suspicion towards outsiders. Initially, the British Indian government was not interested in the hill tribes. However, as the government's commercial interest grew, they slowly decided to extend their domination in the frontier regions of northeast India. In order to fulfill this end, they sent a number of survey parties into these territories where they faced hard and tough resistance from the native tribes who were not ready at all to allow the British interference in their internal affairs. In the novel, the male protagonist, Kajinsa, is a chief of the tribe who is equally concerned about the fate of their land. Historically, the tribes Khamti and the Mishmi occupied very strategic areas because they were surrounded by China on the east and Myanmar or Burma on the west. The British government sent military expeditions to these regions not only to stop tribal raids but also to explore the fertile Lama Valley in Tibet. Their expeditions were furthered by the internal feuds between the Khamti and the Mishmi. Therefore, one of the turning points in the course of the narrative is the arrival of Father Nicholas Crick, the Jesuit priest from Paris, who wants to travel to Tibet to set up a missionary there. This is historically relevant because it is from documented history that the author writes. I came upon Father Nicholas Crick's name when I was working on my first book. He had visited Mebo, just across the river, Siang, and had left a written record of his observations of the place and its inhabitants. Now, Father Nicholas Crick was of the opinion that these tribes possessed much of the child's simplicity, and Mebo is undoubtedly less corrupt than Paris. Now, if what Dye writes about the priest is true, it only opens doors for further discussion and time and again brings into fore the question, how could these uncorrupted people be called savage? Yet history also documents the murder of two French priests bound for Tibet, Who murdered them remains a mystery, but that a Mismi man is charged for the crime and executed has been documented. Dai, in her best, weaves this fragment beautifully into the craft. And as you can see in the slide, there are two cutouts from newspapers which are pasted here in the form of screenshots, which further accentuates the truth behind this historical information. But in history, the accused person has no name. In the Black Hill, he is Kajin Shah. But unlike history, which blatantly labels the murder as murder, Dai narrates the circumstances of the crime. In the story, Kajin Shah is innocent. When Father Crick arrives at the Tibetan border for the first time, he is treated with awe and admiration by the local inhabitants of the place. He spends a month peacefully in the Somo Valley when one day he is asked to leave because the Tibetan officials suspect him of making way for a British invasion. Now Kajinsa escorts Crick on his way back, and he reprimands Crick for coming at all. The fact that a chief of Kajinsa's stature shows concern to an outsider, otherwise feared, reaffirms how human psychology is capable of tearing through the faulty constructs of social life. But what Kajinsa does not anticipate is that Crick would make another attempt to reach Tibet, and this time he would be accompanied by another younger priest, Augustine Bore. This time, instead of Kajinsa, Lemet, another guide and chieftain, agreed to show Crick through to Tibet. Now, this particular chieftain is greedy, he is easily manipulated and highly opportunistic. On learning about it, Kajinsa is angry at the priest's stubbornness and angrier still at the vileness of his own people. True to it, on the second trip towards Tibet, Crick and Bori are killed by Lemet's men. While the death of the two priests has been historically recorded, in the novel it is made powerfully poignant. The death of Crick gives an excuse for the British authorities to enter these hidden lands. Kajinsa is betrayed by his own men, who let the authorities arrest him. He is taken to the Dibrugarh jail and is perhaps executed, but history remains silent as it always does in documenting local lives. Kajinsa becomes the hero who falls because of the politics that manipulates people's sentiments, who are already skeptical about foreigners, by those who leave no stone unturned to maintain their status quo. What could have become a history of assimilation becomes one of distrust and accentuates how fear breaches genuine attempts at harmony. Certainly, these frequent interventions ultimately led to the annexation of Arunachal Pradesh, but not before the Great Abor expedition of 1911 to 12, which can be seen in this particular slide, which is in fact one of the biggest incidents in the history of British relations with the hill tribes and clearly highlights how devastating entitlement can be. In fact, the great scholar on Northeast Barrier Alvin, he also remarked this expedition and also justified imperialism by saying that all the crimes which were committed against the British were punished by a brilliant feat of arms. That means he justified imperialism and by extension also justified every war against the Abors. Now it is this entitlement that writers like Mamang Dai tries to rewrite. It is this stereotyping that Dai takes on to exploit and undo. History has wronged many communities, and even though generations now look forward to a promising future, writers like Dai are bound to look back to retell the other side of the stories not documented in factual history. This is this history of hospitality allied with fear and awe, of civility shown by people considered wild, of preserving independence at the wake of an unalterable power dynamics. And this is what the author concludes her book with by saying that rewriting is essential to claim one's history. And with this, I would also like to conclude my paper. Thank you.